Everyone, this lesson is incredibly important. We've talked previously about when the adjective is a single word. However, most of the time, the adjective is actually presented in the form of what we call an adjective clause or an adjective phrase. Now, for the SAT, you don't have to search in details for the difference between clauses and phrases. What I want you to know is that sometimes the adjective is a group of words. And in that case, usually it comes in one of three scenarios. Like, there are three main ways by which an adjective is a group of words. The first one is what is called a relative clause. Or, for the sake of the SAT, let's call it a which, who, or that clause. Another group is the prepositional phrase. And the third group is the participial phrase. So, I think the name really describes what it's composed of. So, in case of prepositional phrase, it is simply a group of words that begins by a preposition. Of course, we will dive into its components right now, but bear with me until we do so. In case of a participial phrase, it is simply a phrase that begins, or a group of words that begins with a participial, or a participle, sorry. And in case of which, who, that clause, these are also called relative pronouns, and they are not the only relative pronouns, but these are the ones that come most in the SAT examination. It simply begins with who, or which, or that, and a phrase. Now, before we dive into each one of them and examples in it, I want you to know that these all have the same function. They, number one, function as adjectives. And number two, for the sake of the SAT examination, like there are actually a lot of details here that are not relevant for SAT test takers or for SAT test takers. But let's just say that they can be dismissed. They can be crossed out or dismissed. And we will explain now what does dismissed or crossed out mean from the sentence. What I mean to say is that they are not essential to the sentence. That means that the sentence is considered a complete sentence without them. Now we want to discuss them in short. So first we have the relative clause, or like I like to call it, the who, which, that clause. And this clause, like we've simply said, is an adjective clause, and we have to know what it's composed of. So first, it's composed of our relative pronoun, which is either who, which, that, and I like to remind myself that who also includes whose and whom. So we have one of those here as my pronoun, plus a verb, plus an object. Okay? So, for example, let's look at these sentences as examples. As you can see, in both of these cases, the highlighted in red is the relative clause, or the who, which, that clause. As you can see, in both cases, we have the relative pronoun, or the who, which, that, whose, whom. We also have a verb, and we have the object of that verb. In the tiger that ate my aunt is the one who was eaten. And in the mailman whose shoes are old here is the object. So in both cases, we have the relative pronoun, we have a verb, and we have an object. Now, remember what I told you. I told you that this sentence can be crossed out or dismissed. What does that mean? That means that if I cross this sentence, look at what I'm gonna do now. I'm gonna cross this out of the sentence. I'm gonna cross this out of the sentence. Let's try reading the sentence now. The tiger is funny. The mailman stopped by. In both cases, the core meaning of the sentence wasn't affected. And this is why I told you that it is not essential. That means that these parts are not essential for the core meaning of the sentence, even if the sentence might seem a little bit awkward. This strategy will be used, inshallah, in subject-verb agreement questions a lot, and we are going to see it. But until then, of course, there's a little bit of grammatical inaccuracy here, to be honest. Like, that is usually essential, but for the sake of the SAT, you can just cross these out. Okay? It's also important here that we see why these are called adjective clause. As you can see in this example, that ate my tiger, that ate my ant refers to the tiger. Which tiger? The tiger that ate my ant. In the second example, the mailman whose shoes are old. Which mailman? The mailman whose shoes are old. So that's why they are called adjective clauses. Now we're going to talk about prepositional phrases. Now, as the name implies, these phrases start with a preposition. Now, there's a very large list of prepositions, and actually I've given you a previous list if you remember, but usually prepositions give us an idea about place or direction. Famous prepositions include in, on, maybe for example off, which is an irregular preposition, from, like, among. Actually, there's a very large list of prepositions, and inshallah, during our sessions we're going to discuss them a lot. So first we have a preposition, then we have what we like to call the object of the preposition. And what that means is the noun that the preposition is referring to. So for example, if I say in the box, then the box is the object of the preposition because the preposition in refers to the box. So the box is the object of that preposition. So let's look at these prepositional phrases, for example. As you can see, first of all, we can see why they're called adjective phrases. So I want the receipt for the underwear. For the underwear describes which receipt I want. Which receipt? Do I want the receipt for the food? Do I want the receipt for my drinks? No, I want the receipt for the underwear. Okay? Look at the second example. The book on the shelf is mine. Which book do I want? Do I want the book in my purse? Do I want the book in my bookstore? No, I want the book on the shelf. So in both cases, we can see that they are adjective phrases. Now it's very important to note something. If you have, as you can see, here is my preposition. And what is the preposition referring to? The underwear. So the underwear is the object of the preposition. In the second example, on the shelf. So on is my preposition. And what is on referring to? The shelf. So this is the object of my preposition. And these are examples on prepositional phrases. Now let's talk about participial phrases. And as the name suggests, this is usually an adjective phrase that starts with a participle. Now, if you don't remember what a participle is, I really recommend that you see our video SAT Basics, Verbs and Verbals, before moving on with this video. Since if you don't have enough knowledge about participles, it will be difficult for you to understand participial phrases. So, for example, let's say the mailman is coming. Let's say I want to describe the mailman. I want to describe him, for example, by saying that he is the one riding the motorcycle. So let's assume that there are several mailmen, and I'm talking about the one who is riding a motorcycle. So I can say the same sentence, the mailman, and then I add my adjective phrase, in this case, a participial phrase. The mailman riding the motorcycle is coming. We can see why it's called an adjective phrase, since it describes the mailman. Which mailman? The one riding the motorcycle. And the same rule that we said previously applies here, that the adjective phrase is not essential for the meaning of the sentence. That means that the core meaning of the sentence is preserved even if we eliminate it. So let's, for example, try deleting this portion of the sentence and read the sentence. The mailman is coming. It's still a 100% complete, correct sentence. This is regarding the participial phrase. I hope that you understood as much as you want, or as much as you need, rather, from this video. And inshallah, we will see you later. Assalamu alaikum.